welcome to another episode of the What's in the Words podcast. We're back and we're excited about another amazing book that we're reviewing. Steve, what book are we reviewing today?
What's up? What's up? Today we have the pleasure of touching on Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday, which I'm very excited about covering this book today, AJ. There's just so much underlying, messages within this book. And it's a realization for everybody. Everybody has a little ego, but it's how much ego are you allowing to consume your life? Is that the leading force in your life? And we're about to break that down today.
And for those of you who are tuning in the first time, we want to start out by saying, number one, thank you for tuning in. And number two, this is episode number 5 for us. So that means there are 4 more episodes that we've done. So we'd like for you to go back and take a listen because we've had a lot of great books that we've reviewed by some amazing authors. So we think there's a lot to be gleaned from some of the information that we've shared. And you may even pick up another book or two to add to your collection. I think I'll start out with my one sentence kind of overview, summary, big picture. What is Ego is the Enemy all about in a couple sentences. So because we see the world through our eyes, it's very easy to think that everything is about us. I've heard that before, that as children, until you realize that there are other people's interests in the world, that's the way they approach everything. So that's why you have to teach kids to share. You have to teach them all these things that it's not necessarily about them. But even as adults, it's easy that because we see things that evolve around us, we think that the other world is thinking about us as well. And chances are they're probably not. So this book talks about, being able to release that self-centered, self as a center of the universe approach to things and think about them external of yourself. What about you, Steve? What's your big kind of high level overview?
One of the things I think Ryan did a great job of is breaking this book into 3 parts. And within these 3 parts, he gives you different stories, historical figures, and talks about how ego played a factor in their success or their demise, which I thought was profound in his approach and how he delivered it. So in the book, the 3 parts that he broke down, the first was aspire, second was success, and third was failure. What you get from this audio book is him giving you these lessons to help you suppress ego early on before bad habits take hold. And that's one of the biggest things I always talk about is we're right now being impacted by habits that we might have that we've acquired when we were teenagers, right? So he does a great job of helping you try to suppress that ego, to replace the temptation of ego with humility and discipline when we experience success, because success can be an amazing rush. Success could be like a drug. And we're going to talk about this a little bit more and break this down. But when you have a little bit of taste of success, sometimes that ego kicks in and you feel as if you have all the answers and, you become disconnected from the world. And I think he does an amazing job of breaking down these different facets and feelings when it comes to ego.
Absolutely. So one of my takeaways, Steve, was that you have to understand your position. And then you have to check your ego to make sure that when you're in your position, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing relative to that position, even if you have aspirations to move to another position. So for example, if you're at a job and your job is to make things easier for other people, and that's just an example, then that's your job. Your job is to clear the path for others. And that's not necessarily the time to try and clear the path for yourself. And it's not necessarily the time to look at how well you're clearing the path for others with a envy or from an egotistical perspective of thinking, well, I'm the person clearing the path. So why am I clearing the path for this person when that is your job in that particular instance, right? So it's understanding how to check yourself in context to where you are in the big picture. What's one of your takeaways, Steve?
Yeah, for me, there was a point in the book when he made a comment when he said, with every vision and goal, ego is there undermining us.
Mhm.
And ego is always there. It's waiting to pop its head out. Like, is this a moment for me to pop out? You know, it's waiting like double dutch. It's like, is this the moment
Yeah.
where I jump in? And what the takeaway I got from it is, this was a key point in the book when he says, when you remove ego, you're left with what is real. You
Mm.
know, and that's so true. It's like when you peel back those layers of ego, what's left is real. Where ego is, you know, he says ego is stolen because it's you just, you know, creating these ideas and visions and realizations in your head that everything that I say is fact, everything that I believe is true. And he goes and says confidence is earned. And when he said that, man, I felt that so much because, you know, AJ, it's a
Yes.
grind. You know, it's blood,
Daily.
sweat, and tears to make things
Mhm.
happen. You know, especially as an entrepreneur. You know, you got to grind, and even in corporate America, you have to grind. You got to play the game to climb that corporate ladder. And when you do, you have the right to be confident because
Mhm.
you put in the work, right? Some people might have a layer of success and allow that ego to consume their lives. And you automatically become disconnected with the world because there's no room for growth because everything you say you believe is true. And
Absolutely.
sometimes there's no fact behind it. You just, in your mind, that ego is just pushing you to say, nah, I know it's right because it's me. And I love when he says, you know, ego is stolen. It's like you're stealing the moment. Confidence is it. You know, confidence, there's a difference between the two. You know, confidence is earned. You know, confidence is potent. And ego can be poisonous. It can be that poisoning factor.
Absolutely. And another thing, and this kind of goes to that, it is ego will allow your highs to go higher and your lows to go lower.
Mm.
So for example, you know, when you're in your ego, you can accomplish something and immediately think that it's all about you and you did a great job and you don't give credit to the other people that helped you get to the place that you're doing. So what he suggested is that when you have a high point, you use that high inflection point to reflect on what are some of the things that I can do better, right? So if you look at superstar high performing athletes, they'll look at game tape, no matter how great their performance was, they'll look at game tape and they'll say, you know what, I could have done that better. Or maybe if I would have made this little adjustment, I would have knocked that shot down, right? But at the same time, not allow your lows to get you all the way down. Because again, what's the one of the things they say about shooters? If you're in a slump, you got to shoot your way
Keep
out of it,
shooting.
right?
Yeah,
you
keep
can't
shooting.
you keep shooting. You can't get
Shoot or
out of a
shoot.
slump without shooting, right? So you
Right.
can't allow your lows. The ego will allow your lows to be like woe is me. Like, nah, it's not woe is me. You made a mistake. Now what can you do to fix it, right?
Right.
So it'll allow your high inflection points to give you a chance to see what you can do better, but at the same time, your low inflection points to give you a chance to see what you can do better as well.
And my takeaway, my second takeaway, I loved when it was early on in the book, and he was giving an example when he was doing what he thought was right. He was doing what he thought he was supposed to be doing because society rewards you for it. You know, you get the likes, you get the comments, you know, you get the speaking gigs, you know, you get, you know, all the praise. But then you watch your future wife walk out the door because you
Right.
aren't the person you used to be.
Right.
And man, you know, we talked about this a couple episodes ago, you know, when you were like, hey, you know, like, how do you manage your time? You know, because when you love what you do, when you're passionate about what you do, you can do it all day, all night because you love it. It's not work.
Right.
It's something that you love. You know, it's like eating your favorite ice cream or drinking your favorite drink. Like, you don't think twice because you love it. It's a part of you, you know? But from the outside looking in, for somebody who might be in a relationship with you or a friend or a spouse or somebody else externally, you are someone different, you know, because you're going into a different drive. But are you managing that moment? Are you managing your time? Are you managing and respecting others? Right? because that drive comes with a price, and you have to understand that, and you can't just keep going and not respect and manage your time enough to understand that there are other people that are involved and around you.
Now we're going to move into our quotes, and this is something that I really enjoy every week. My favorite quote from the book is, "The greatest leaders and the wisest thinkers have always been the best students of life." I think that's number one. That's a great quote. But number two, there's definitely truth in that. In every corporation that I've worked in, when I've had chances to talk to the CEO or a CEO type person, they're always curious. They're always curious. They want to know, what are you working on? What's going well? And, people look at that and they're like, oh, the CEO makes 100 times what the lowest employee, does. It's because they're probably adding 100 times the value and spending 100 times learning new things.
Yeah.
And even when, again, some of the smartest people that I know, they're always curious. They're always reading. They're always trying to figure out what is the next thing that they can get an edge in. And it's not only in career. There's another book that I'm kind of in the middle of, but it talks about most of the people who have won Nobel Peace Prizes. They were really good at what they do, but they also have 6 or 7 other things that they tinker in just to challenge them. Some of them do, they write, they do poetry. One guy spent some of his side time doing comedy. So they always have these other interests that pique a different side of their brain that make them a very well-rounded person. So in what ways can you be a student, not only to life, but in everything? What can you learn along the way to make you a better person?
Yeah, they say good CEOs typically read about 40 to 60 books a year. They tap in, they log in, and it's true. It's like they're always reading. They're on the plane, they're reading a book. They're on the train, the car, audio book, They could be in the office during lunchtime reading. They're just constantly consuming information. And, reading, there's so many benefits to it because it sharpens the mind, right? Your brain is like a muscle, and you need to constantly work that muscle in order for it to stay tip top on point. Because if you don't, that's when memory loss starts to develop. Like, it happens for everybody. But the more you read and the more you exercise that mind, it stays in shape and it stays strong. I kind of went off on a little bit, but I wanted to touch on that.
No, that's good. And then I think one more thing to add to that is it gives you a different perspective on different things, right? As a consultant, and you've worked in a consultant capacity as well, the best thing that you can bring to any kind of consultancy is an array of experiences, right? Because now you can look at other industries, or you can pull information from something that you read along the way that may apply to this particular situation in a way that nobody ever thought about it before. And it's because you've been dabbling and kind of reading in these other places and you have other experiences. So reading just gives you that breadth of information to pull from.
I love it. So my quote, and there was so many, there's endless quotes in this book, and there's endless things that I want to talk about, but in respect of time, the quote that I pulled out was, "Ego is the magnet for enemies and error." And when you think about it, ego can put you in a position to be machismo and feel as if your shit don't stink. You're out there, you're braggadocious.
Yep.
You're, hey, look at me, look at what I'm doing, look what I'm accomplishing. And it's a different tone, right?
It's a different tone.
It's a different tone, and that can create enemies. That can create people to be envious. It can create people to not want to be around that energy at all. And then it's a magnet for errors because you're blocking off the world. You're not listening to ideas. You're not listening to innovation. You're not listening to others because you feel as if you have the answers all the time. And there was a point short after when he says, if you start believing in your own greatness, it's the death of your creativity. And it is because you stop digging in deeper. You stop asking the questions. You stop researching, you stop reading because you think you have the answers. You think as if I am on top of the mountain, I'm on top of the world. Can't nobody tell me anything because I have all the answers, you know, and that opens up lanes for error. So I thought that was a real key quote that I wanted to pull out and share.
And growing up, my grandmother used to always say, "Pride comes before the fall."
Mm,
Right?
right.
And that's because pride is when nobody can tell you anything. And we've seen it over and over again. And just one quick example, if we look at Blockbuster Netflix,
Hmm.
if we look at, over and over again and like Google, Yahoo, right? All these opportunities that the king of the mountain had an opportunity to see an innovation, but because they didn't want to pay attention to these little kids with the internet.
Right.
They're innovated out of the industry altogether. So now this is a part of the podcast where we try to figure out, what is one thing that the author could have done better in the message and in the delivery. And Steve, I didn't really, I didn't really see anything in this book that I didn't like.
Yeah, I can come and say, hey, AJ, make something up.
Yeah.
But, in respect to, how he put this together, the only thing that I can say is it just made me realize that I needed to do a little bit more research of our history and historical figures.
Yes.
Because he used some examples of folks, and I grew up, I was a fan of Shakespeare. I didn't go deep into Shakespeare, but I love plays and I love, the aura of it. But I didn't go as deep as he did as far as pulling out words and pulling out sentences and pulling out examples, of how certain leaders referenced Shakespeare and stuff like that. I thought that was amazing.
It just made me want to go deeper into Stoicism as well.
Right.
And he has another, The Obstacle is the Way, and a couple others. This book just made me want to read more of his work.
Definitely. He definitely hit it. He hit it out the park. He hit it out the park with this one. So I guess it's time for the Black Fist.
Time for the Black Fist. So we're too early in the game to give it 5 Black Fists. You know what I'm saying? Like, what is this, episode 5? So we can't just give it away right now. But I think
it would have been poetic to give five for five 5 fists on episode 5, but
but yeah, nah, there's no serendipity in that. But I think I'm definitely giving it a super strong 4.5, just because something inside me won't let me give the 5 away right now.
Right. And I'm aligned. For me, it's a 4.5. I definitely, I'm not mad at a 4.5 at all. I think, like you said, it's early in the game. There's a lot more books that we need to do, a lot more episodes, and maybe a year down the line we can say, hey, because we're readers, so we're gonna come back and tap into these books again. Like it's not like this is the last time we're going to read these books.
Yeah.
So maybe in a year, a yearly review, we can talk about some, 2 or 3 of the books that really had an impact on us that we covered this year. And maybe it'll go from a 4.5 to 5. Who knows,
Maybe, yeah.
But, we want to leave some runway for this to breathe. And not come out the box as giving 5s out just for the sake of it. But
right.
He definitely earned this 4.5, and I'm definitely glad that I was able to tap into this book.
Right. So we'll say like we playing spades. 4.5 and a possible.
And a possible.
So I don't usually do this, but this book it's done so well that it's a reference book. And here's what I mean. I have a book in my living room that I will go to sometimes, and I'll just flip it open. And no matter what page I land on, there's a passage on that page, and I can read 1 or 2 paragraphs, and whatever I read somehow applies to what I'm going through, like in life or in business or in my relationship, almost like a horoscope. It's always something that applies, right? I think this is definitely one of those books that you can grab, and at any given moment, no matter what you're going through, you can flip open it to this page, or if you get the audio, you can just press play and listen for 10 minutes, and you'll get something from it. So I think that you can definitely use this book in that capacity.
Absolutely. I totally agree. This book, you could definitely flip through chapters. You could flip through the 3 different parts within the book, and you're going to get something that you're going to learn from that chapter. So I definitely agree on this being a reference book.
Yeah, and it's almost like you can rip out any page and like pull quotes from it, and those can be quotes that you use on Instagram.
Right.
Before we close, we always want to share our information with you. Steve and I are both published authors. I have a book that helps you write and publish a book. And if you want to get a copy, you can get a copy for free. That's ajsfreebook.com. Steve, how can they find your book?
And my book is available on Amazon, all formats, softcover, audiobook, ebook, or you can come direct and get it on themindofawinnerbook.com.
Absolutely. And we also want your feedback. So please, please, please tag a friend if you're listening to this on Instagram. If you're on one of the other podcast platforms, take a screenshot and tag us on Instagram. On Instagram, I am at AJ Joyner. That is my most engaged platform. Steve?
And you can find me on all platforms at Steve Canal, SteveCanal.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to call this one a wrap. I don't have anything else, Steve. You good?
I'm good. Thank you all for tuning in. This is number 5. We have a lot more books to go. We have some goodies that are in store that we are going to cover and dive into the words so we can share with you. So thank you again for tuning in. We greatly appreciate it.
And you know what? Let me say this before we go. A minute ago, Steve made reference to how CEOs are constantly reading books. If they're on a plane, they're reading books. If they're on a bus, they're reading books. If they're in their car, they're reading books. Well, what we're doing right now is we're making it easy. All you have to do is just listen to every episode. You get a book in under 30 minutes.
and we're breaking down the meanings to these books. So it's taking it a little bit deeper. So we're here for you. This is what it's about. We enjoy this. We love reading. So, and these are audiobooks. So it's and we're turning it, these are audiobooks and we're doing a podcast based on audiobooks. So you're getting to hear the words and our passion and our meaning. So again, make sure if this is your first time tuning in, we have 4 other episodes, listening on those episodes. And hopefully, we'll keep you along on the ride.
All right. That's all I got, man. All right, y'all. Peace.
Peace.